All right, today's hot topic is here. Ladies and gentlemen, the co-president of the Women's March, Miss Tamika Mallory.
Hey,
Good morning, Tamika.
Thank you so much for having me on. Good morning.
Co-pres. Hey, listen, I know your phone is on fire right about now.
Always something going on. We don't have dull moments at the Women's March.
I can imagine, because this weekend is happening. It's going down.
Absolutely.
Very excited about it. We're going to be out there. Shea Parker's going to be out there Saturday. So tell us a little bit about what to expect. And you know, they're talking inclement weather.
I know. But you know, rain, sleet, snow, shine, whatever happens, we always are committed to still being in the street. Mm-hmm. Our issues in terms of injustice does not stop just because the rain or you know, bad weather. So we still need to be there. We still need to gather. You know, people need to know, first of all, Saturday is clearly a very important day where folks will be gathering in D.C. at Freedom Plaza. Mm-hmm. And we will be marching physically as long as the weather permits that to happen. Right. But we will march, and then we will also be rallying at Freedom Plaza. Okay. So that's certainly happening. But we also will be holding a lobby day on Friday, tomorrow, that people can get involved with by going to womensmarch.com. So if you go to womensmarch.com right now, you can find out more about our lobby day. We're unveiling a policy agenda, which will give people real substantive issues and legislative items that they can focus on. So we're not just coming out of the weekend saying, okay, we had a march. We're actually looking at policy that people can push in their local communities. And so tomorrow they can gather with us to go and do a lobby day, and then as well as Saturday for the march. Got it.
Now, Tamika, what are the main kind of the main topics when people go down to march? I mean, last year was huge, right? Mm-hmm. So many people, you saw a little bit of everything. There were women marching about reproductive rights. You had black women marching about Black Lives Matter. You had a lot of different causes, violence, gun violence. So what do you all have, like, very specific, okay, this is what the Women's March is about? Or is it one of those things where, like, any woman or anyone in support of women for any issue at all, you know, it's like everyone come out?
How does it work? Both. I think that we try to provide entry points for any individual to get involved. So it doesn't matter what your issue is. Obviously, women are not a monolith. We come from lots of different backgrounds, and we have various issues that we care about, and we have various issues that are actually impacting our communities. So some people in their communities, you know, climate issues are really important in terms of pollution. But then in other communities, it may be gun violence. So in each community, there are different issues, and we give a way for folks to deal with those things. But our policy agenda is something that was pulled together by over 70 women actually participating in a process to talk about some of the most challenging issues and what are the policy recommendations that are attached to them, so that, as we saw, over 100 women going into being elected to office in this just last midterm election cycle. And we want to make sure we don't just put people in office and make it ceremonial, but that we go back to them and say, here are some of the specific issues we want to work on. So certainly you'll see gun violence. You'll see pay equity issues in our platform. You'll see issues around the Muslim ban. So there are a number of things that we'll be dealing with, and, you know, and it will continue to evolve. That's the thing about movements in this work, you know, in terms of people feeling like, well, what about me? Come to the table, engage, so that we understand your issues and we're able to put the resources behind helping you deal with them. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, especially with challenges, because, Tamika, I mean, you're heavy in the spotlight, and with the spotlight comes all of the, you know, just all of the noise of it all, right? So there's the issues. There's the issues that you stand for, and there's the fight. And in that fight is going to come those challenges and people and journalists that are going to challenge you. We saw the interview on The View. Absolutely. And there was a lot of pushback or challenge regarding, you know, is the Women's March open to everybody and that platform and who you're associated and affiliated with. And, you know, I watched the interview, and then I read through different comments and to get perspective. After
you got off The View, what has been for you, what has been your take, your perspective coming out of that interview, and just people saying essentially, is kind of creating thoughts and creating a new narrative or creating a narrative about you? Because some people may have just been introduced to you on The View.
Okay.
So the narrative, a new narrative is being written. What did you leave that show kind of thinking or feeling? Where you at now?
I think that it's important that people hear directly from me. So, Meghan McCain is who she is, and she behaves the way that she behaves, and there are millions of Americans who knows that behavior is not appropriate, and that's her business, and we can put that over here. But for me, I know that there are a number of people, and I can tell that just by the response on my social media and what people are saying to me directly, who got an opportunity to hear some of my perspective, and that has not been the case. What we've been dealing with are people telling our stories, people telling my story, people talking about me without me being a part of the dialogue. And I think in this particular moment, people are able to see, first of all, that I'm not this like crazy, vile, bigot that they want to try to paint me to be. And also that I actually have a perspective, and I come from a community that has deeply complex issues that I have been involved with my whole life, and I will never, ever separate from that. So unfortunately, there's you take a lot of heat, and there people do want to find ways, and I understand there are some people who have valid concerns, they have valid questions, and I'm at the table to discuss those things. But I am who I am. I came here a certain way, and I'm going to leave here the same way. I will not allow the fact that I'm the leader of this movement, or in this movement, one of the leaders in this movement, not but in the movement. I will not allow that to take away from the work that I've been doing for a long time. Because to be clear, I went to the Women's March, not because the Women's March was going to, exalt me and make me so great. It was because I was bringing Black folks with me, the concerns of the Black community. And now I'm willing to sit at the table and figure out ways to work with other individuals so that we can broaden our movements and broaden our power. But it wasn't that I was willing to put Black folks' struggle to the side. That's not going to happen.
But how do you feel as far I've been seeing, and again, I'm looking for confirmation on a lot of this stuff too, because you can't trust everything you read, but sponsors pulling out of the march and things like that. Is that the case? And what does that have to, how do you kind of, I guess, maneuver or adjust with those situations, especially like you said, you're saying, I'm sticking to this is my vision. This is my
values.
Yeah,
exactly.
So how do you what is the challenge now as far as staying true to those values, but also understanding that with the Women's March comes the sponsorships, comes the dollars that helps propel it as well and propel your messages. And is that in jeopardy?
So there are definitely challenges. I will not sit here and say, everything is just wonderful and we're doing, no, there are challenges. But I do also understand that the media tries to create narratives that are just not true. So for instance, the Democratic National Committee has never said that they pulled out of the Women's March because of me or because of some comments that I made. That did not happen. They, in fact, have released a statement that says the opposite of that they support all the women's resistance movements that are on the ground, and anyone who is pushing back against this current establishment, this current administration's bullcrap, as far as I'm concerned, and the danger of this administration, that they support those groups. But they have never supported any of the women's marches. It's never happened. There was an era that took place, and then we can talk all day about how their name was added and then it was removed because it should not have been there, and it was straightened out. They have not said one time, there's not one statement that you can find where the DNC chair or where anyone within the DNC said, because Tamika Mallory said this or did these different things, we've pulled out. But the media can, if they want, write a narrative that will make it seem that way. I'll give you another example. The NAACP, it was literally an administrative error. They were on the website for a few moments, and there was a mix-up between NAACP organization and NAACP NAACP youth in college, because that is also a thing. And somehow NAACP, as the organization, the national organization, dropped off the list for a few hours. Okay, for a few hours.
Right.
But the haters are watching every second.
Absolutely.
And the next thing you know, the NAACP is not with the Women's March. And the president, the president, Derek Johnson, had to go on the air and also make statements to say we support the Women's March. In fact, President Johnson has signed a letter with other black leaders, particularly black women and our allies, on my behalf. But if you let these folks tell the story, the NAACP dropped out, because that's their job. Their job is to try to create division and use any opportunity that they can to make it seem as if somehow or another the Women's March is just losing all of its support. Right. I still want to say, though, that there are challenges in terms of particular communities that we have to address, and we're leaning into those conversations.
So what's sort of your advice to, folks who may find issue or may be confused by what they saw on The View or what they're reading in the media? What would be your advice as to how they kind of move around that or move past that and still be a part of the movement? Because it seems, in a lot of the comments or, the backlash that has been received, people are kind of, it is or it's not. It's like, if I don't, support what I saw on The View or what have you, then I'm completely not a part of the movement. So what would be your advice to people who are like sort of on that strap line and still want to be a part, but are, conflicted in that?
I think that, first of all, our role as leaders, if you will, are to work. That's our role, is to work. It's not for people to be so attached to a leader that because I say something you like or dislike, that it's the end all be all of your own survival. Because all of us who are in this struggle fighting have to understand that we're not going to agree on every point. There's just no way. The whole point of intersectionality is that many of us are going to come to the table from different perspectives. And somehow or another, we have to find common goals, things that we can work on. Trust and believe, there's a lot of ish that happens in this movement that I don't feel good about. I don't like some of the things that have been said to me. I've not always felt included. I have felt excluded, in fact. And we know that black women have been one of the loudest forces saying this movement is not for me. It does not represent me well. And it's not just about the Women's March. It's about the women's movement in general and feminism as a whole. But what we have said over and over is that we must have a seat at the table. In fact, we must be built into the fabric of the table. Whatever that table is made of, every time you look at the different parts, it's like black women, brown women. We need to show up. Because if our issues are not number one, then we're not really doing the real work. And I would hope that people, to answer your question even more directly, would look at this movement and say, are these people sincere? Are they saying, hey, I have a particular set of principles and values that I stand by, but at the same time, I want to be in relation with other people. I want to be, and I'm speaking of me personally. Right. While, yes, there are issues that I'm sure people take with me and, and other groups that I work with or have been around. At the same time, I also have a 20-year track record of being someone who has worked with every community, and I will continue to do that. And I hope that people will see my track record, my words, and the sincerity of my work, and really judge me based upon that.
Absolutely. Tamika, thank you so much for being here, for speaking your truth, speaking power to truth, and again, controlling your narrative. I think that's very important, that you're always on top of that.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. Again, let everybody know this Saturday, Women's March, where to go.
This Saturday, folks, first of all, should go to womensmarch.com. That's womensmarch.com to get more information. All the logistical information is there. But you need to be at Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C. on Saturday morning. And I would, again, just really encourage people to, of course, bundle up, because it's going to be cold. And they say there may be rain and other things. And don't sit home just because the weather is bad. We sometimes do that with voting. We stay home because the weather is bad.
Don't do that.
Well, when the weather passes over, we still have challenges in our communities. And so we need to make the sacrifice of being there to raise our voices.
Thank you so much, Tamika Mallory.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know when this